All right, North Korea launching a missile generally doesn't strike a lot of you as news, but North Korea launching about 23 of them in one night is big news, especially when one of them landed just off the coast of South Korea for the first time and got alarming responses from Japan, who was saying that their country was barely missed by these. What to make of this and where this takes us now in a battle over nuclear weapons and the like by the North Koreans and the Chinese and fears about the Russians. It's all bubbling at the same time. Mike Pompeo, our former Secretary of State, former CIA Director. Secretary, always good to have you. They've never done anything like this, North Korea. They've taunted and the rest, but 23 in a single evening. What did you make of it?
Well, goodness, Neil, I think what you just described, I think these things are all connected, whether it was the Chinese aggressiveness or there's Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine now. Now 23, almost 24 missiles in a single night fired off of both coasts of South Korea. I think this is a result of American weakness. I think it's like the old Southwest Airlines line. They're feeling free to move about the cabin because they think it is safe to do so. That didn't happen on our watch. These things are cumulative, whether it was the failure in Afghanistan or doing nothing when Vladimir Putin lined his troops up in Russia in the fall of last year. I think the bad guys can see that this is their moment and that America's actions aren't matching its rhetoric. And I fear that we're going to see even more of what appears to be multiple crises around the world simultaneously, almost a cascading series of risks.
I'm wondering, when you talk about these disparate developments that all happen around the same time, Secretary, and we get news that the Iranians and they might be planning an attack on the Royal Kingdom in Saudi Arabia, and it might be wider than that. What do you make of all of this?
Again, we had a maximum pressure campaign on the Iranian regime, and it didn't stop them from everything. They fired ballistic missiles in September of 2019 into a Saudi Aramco facility where there were Americans, but we had a real response. We took out one of their most senior leaders who the whole world said it couldn't be done without creating World War III, General Qasem Soleimani. We were prepared to defend the things that mattered to the American people. America's interests around the world were safe for 4 years. And when you let them shut down a gasoline pipeline and tell them don't do it again, when you get 13 Americans killed in Afghanistan, when you alienate partners and friends in the Middle East like the Saudis and the Emiratis, these are folks, Neil, who when it's tough, they'll be with us. Instead, we negotiated with the Iranians, who are aiming to do nothing more than wipe out the little Satan, Israel, and the great Satan, America. Those are fundamental misunderstandings of how the world actually works, and it is an enormous risk to the American people.
Secretary, the administration had been preparing a response to the Saudis, leading that effort to cut oil production on the part of OPEC, OPEC plus countries as well, by 2 million barrels a day. Given these latest developments and concern about Iranian attacks and the like, do you think that's put off? Should it be put off?
Well, of course it should be put off. We shouldn't turn to the Iranians and the Venezuelans for crude oil. We should turn to Texans, Kansans, North Dakotans, people here in the United States. And we should turn to nations that when America needs the most will be with us. And those nations in the Gulf, those Arab nations in the Gulf are clearly that. We built the Abraham Accords around this model. We reduced the risk we have to send our kids to fight there. And so this idea that somehow overthrowing the regime in Saudi Arabia, which is what some are asking for, right? They're saying we're not going to deal with this regime. That is really dangerous for the United States of America. And so whatever the Biden administration is planning to somehow punish the Saudis is an enormous mistake given the complexity and the risk that Iran presents to our friend Israel and to the American people.
So I assume you would extend that to this idea that Democrats have been pushing for the president to withhold or limit arms sales to the Saudis.
Oh, goodness, we should absolutely do that. Selling American-made weapon systems to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is in America's best national security interest. It's good for our arms industry, for jobs here in the United States, but most importantly, it keeps us all safer. It means that our kids won't have to go do the work in those places, that the Gulf states themselves will provide defense for themselves from the Iranians and from the threats. And you can see this, Neil. The Iranians are selling weapons to the Russians today, killing Ukrainian kids, the very place we're trying to push back against, to give the Iranians money and not provide support to the Gulf Arab states, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Enormously backwards set of ideas for how to keep America safe.
Secretary, thank you very, very much. We'll follow things closely. Mike Pompeo, our
Thank
former
you, Neil.
Secretary of State and CIA
Yes, sir.
Director. Meanwhile, folks.